Origin finally did it. The only boot 100% made in the United States, not assembled in the US from imported parts, not made in the US from imported materials. This boot is 100% manufactured in the United States from raw materials and components sourced from the United States. But they've also completely changed the way that they make their boots from the other two that we've cut in half. So we're gonna run this boot through our test, cut it in half to really see if this new boot is better than their other boots. What's actually different about it? How did they get it to be 100% made in the United States? Is it now overpriced because it's 100% MITUSA? And at the end of the video, we're gonna compare it to two of the best priced and most popular mock toes on the market in the Thorogood and the White's Perry Select. We've covered the history of Origin pretty extensively in all the other videos. We'll put links to those below. But the key points you need to know from this is they're a really young brand and they really specialize and really focus on trying to make as much as humanly possible in the United States. And they're not even that old of a company. They started in 2011 and really didn't even start making boots until like 3 or 4 years ago, because for the most part, they're making jujitsu gis, then into clothing, then into hunting clothes, and then finally into boots. And so keep that in mind when we're going through this video, because I think it plays an important role. We just dropped our hand-sewn lanyards, and this is a callback to early days Anvil when I was just up in like at art shows selling like 2 or 3 of these a day and just trying to make enough money to pay the rent on that first shop that I was like, I just have to make $1,000. And I was just making a bunch of these lanyards, a bunch of the wallets and stuff, and we just never got back around to making these. Well, after we made that cinching wrist strap for the cameras, I was like, that die could work just fine as a lanyard. And it was almost by accident that this worked, because that one strip of the cinching wrist strap works perfectly to just sew it up on into itself, to wrap around itself, and those 3 points of sewing make a perfect little wrist strap. It's just big enough to get your hand in. Still hand sewn right here in the shop, no sewing machines, a single piece of thread, 2 needles, weaving it in and out in a saddle stitching technique, so it's never gonna fail on you. So if you want a hand sewn lanyard, if you want one of the slim wrist straps, you want one of the slim neck straps, all kind of the same vibe of this. And I'll put links to all the other stuff we released recently below, because they make great little Christmas gifts, especially if you don't know what to get your dude or your girl and you wanna give them something high quality. Check out one of these or our neck straps, check them out below. So what is this boot? Well, the brand is Origin. The style is the Maine Moc toe boot. They weigh 1 pound, 11 ounces. They retail for $329. They're made in Maine, USA. And the way they position this boot is everyday gear that's crafted for life, American legacy with modern innovation, built to be worn in. And if you do want a pair of these, check them out via links in my description. So now start looking at the materials of this boot and see what they changed, what's better, what's worse, how it compares to these other 2 boots. Because if you look at this leather, it looks very, very familiar. You know, this looks, well, first of all, it's the same leather as it's on their regular boots, but this leather is very similar to what we saw in the White's Perry Select. It's probably tanned from the same tannery in Seidel that's well known for making some of the best work boot leather. It's 2.2 to 2.5 millimeters thick, which is right on par with the other Origins that we've cut in half. We look at the cross section, plenty of grain in there, so it is a high quality, nice leather. It's a work boot leather. It's gonna be really durable. It's gonna last a long time. And we ran the puncture test on it. It took 118 pounds to puncture through. And so it is a very good leather, especially for the price point. It's right where it needs to be. And then just generally the pattern. This is one thing with Origin that's really different. But the way that this mock toe stitch comes around, it sweeps with the flow of the lines of this entire boot. It just flows really, really well. But what about the lining? Because this is where, like, Origin is kind of all over the place with their linings, because their regular boots are unlined except for the little lining in the heel and the vamp that's leather. Then their more modern, the recent boots are lined with like kind of a spacer mesh with the leather lining in the vamp. And then you look at this boot, and this entire boot is lined with the fabric material all the way through the vamp. The only part that has leather is in that internal heel counter cover, which also is not in this one. And so it's kind of like a mismatch of all the best components and how I would, my ideal boot, which is more similar to this, where not a lot of fabric because fabric wears out faster, it smells faster, but it's a lot more comfortable, it breaks in sooner, it absorbs your sweat more. And so it's kind of that trade-off you have to make no matter what when it comes to unlined versus lined boots. I would prefer a completely unlined boot, but we asked Origin why they did that, and that's exactly why. They wanted something a little more comfortable for the initial break-in, something that absorbs your sweat more at the expense of some potential durability that they've made up for in the high wear spots by using that internal counter cover. Then if we pull out the insole, it's the exact same insole I put in all their boots, just a fabric topped, pretty decent foam. You know, it's not open cell, it's not a really hard close cell, it's a nice squishy, reboundy close cell foam. Then underneath, also built exactly the same. You can see it has that exact same pour-on style memory foam on top, and so I'm assuming the other layers might be the same. But that's where these boots really start to differ, is how they're built. Because the way that Origin makes all their other boots is through a Blake stitch construction, where the upper is tucked underneath the insole, and then all that is sewn together internally and sewn through that midsole, and the outsole is glued on. And then at the toe, it's flared out, and you've got that stitch down construction, kind of combining some lighter weight construction with the more heavy duty, like Pacific Northwest stitch down construction. And that's what made it a really unique feeling boot. Versus this, on their new boot, this is a Goodyear welt construction. This is more the traditional way of doing things. A lot of the boots on the market do it this way. It's a tried and true way of making it a high quality, durable boot, because each component is almost replaceable. Because the problem with the stitch down in the toe is that is the upper of the boot that you're gonna be potentially wearing through if you start kicking through this or you wear through it. Where a Goodyear welted boot, this piece is a completely separate piece. So if you kick through that or wear through that, you can sew a new one on. If you wear out the outsole, it's still built in the same way, where you could peel both of these outsoles off, glue a new one on. And just generally, which is more durable out of the two of them, I would say the Goodyear welt is more durable, especially than the Blake stitch in the heel. Because that extra flexibility, that extra agility and lightweightness you get from a Blake stitch is balanced by it not being as durable and as strong as a Goodyear welt construction. But this is where and how this is the first 100% made in the USA boot. Because if you remember from these other videos, the one piece, there's only one little piece that Origin could not source in the United States. And it's this leather midsole layer. And it's on all the boots that we've cut apart. But you might notice that this Goodyear welted boot does not have that leather midsole. And so that's how this is the very first 100% made in the United States boot. So it's kind of a backdoor entry into fixing the one problem they had. And I don't think that's why they did it. Because if you look at these other boots that we're gonna compare at the end, they're basically built in the same way. Because that rubber midsole and that outsole is almost identical with all these wedge sole boots. They almost never have a dedicated leather layer. And part of that's because leather and rubber and leather and synthetics don't glue together as well as synthetic and synthetic, or rubber and rubber. And where on a wedge sole, you rarely have any nails holding the outsole on, unlike some of the more traditionally built boots with a heel. You need a really strong connection and bond between those two layers. And so they omitted the leather midsole for this construction, which in a roundabout way also made it the first 100% made in the USA boot. So not the way I thought Origin was gonna get across that finish line of the first 100% made in the USA boot. And hopefully they'll still find a source for this midsole. And I think they're going to eventually. So now let's cut these things in half, see what's on the inside, see if anything has changed, see if there's any corners cut to get this new kind of boot to that specific price range. And maybe more importantly, how does it compare to these two boots? All right, we got them cut in half, and if you're not subscribed, consider just pushing that subscribe button. We're so close to 1 million subscribers, and we got 3 really cool big announcements that we'll start working on as soon as we hit that 1 million subscriber mark. We'll do a big announcement and start teasing them. So help us get across that finish line. Support these videos where you can. So now, let's see what's on the inside of the Origin, see what's real, what's fake, what they changed. Is it better, is it worse? Let's find out. Let's see what's inside. So what's different inside of here? Well, the biggest thing that a lot of the heritage guys are gonna love is they replaced that foam filling material that wasn't really as important in this style of construction because it's a lot flatter. There's not a void created by that Goodyear welt. Well, in their new Goodyear welt version, they didn't use foam, they used cork. And that's kind of the old school traditional way of filling that Goodyear welt gap. It also has that fiberglass shank and the exact same foam and lasting materials as the other two boots. And now we can really see that it is truly a Goodyear welt construction because you can see how that stitch there sews down to that midsole, and then this hidden stitch sews to the inside underneath the insole, and that's why this is such a strong construction, because you've got two different points that thread and glue is holding this entire boot together. And now you can really see what I mean by if you wear through the outsole, you can replace it. If you wear through the welt, you can replace it, because it's kind of a modular multi-piece boot versus some of these other constructions. Even though they're more flexible and they have certain benefits you get from this construction, it's harder to repair, it's not as durable, and the old boots just have fewer components that if you wore through them, you could replace, like the welt. But is this new style of construction with the Goodyear welt better than their other style of construction with the stitch down and the Blake stitch? Depends on what you mean by better, because if you're looking for a more flexible, more agile, lighter boot, this might be a better style of construction. But if you're looking for something more durable, more repairable, more true to the traditional heritage style boots, this might be a better boot for you. But if I compile everything, I'm looking at durability, the aesthetic, the value, the repairability. If I compile all of it, which style of construction do I think is better? Probably the Goodyear welt. And that doesn't mean it's better through and through, because like I said, if you want a more light, agile boot, this is a pretty unique construction that really only Origin does. And it's a unique feeling boot for that reason. But none of that really matters if it's severely overpriced because it's made in the United States. And so how does it compare to these two boots that are also made in the United States? Because we've got the Thorogoods at $280, which is $50 less than the Origin, and then we've got the Perry Selects at $380, which is $50 more than the Origins. So then what do you not get for $50 less in the Thorogoods? Well, you do not get a leather welt, you get a synthetic welt, and you don't get a 100% sourced and made in the United States boot. You get on their tag what says made in the USA with USA and global source components. But other than that, they're very, very similar looking boots, especially from the sole down. So that's why these boots feel almost identical underfoot. But for $50 more, what do you get from the Perry Selects? Well, you get a leather insole instead of the fiberboard and foam. You get a leather shank instead of the fiberglass shank. You get a leather lining instead of the fabric lining that's more like a sneaker. And you get a vegetable tan leather counter instead of a synthetic counter. So looking at this spectrum, $50 more, $50 less, right in the middle, it looks like it fits right in the middle. Quality-wise, price-wise, what you actually get for every dollar spent, because you clearly get some upgrades with the Perrys, but you also get some clear upgrades from the Thorogoods moving to the Origin. And so to me, for quality and for price and everything involved, it belongs right where it is compared to two other made in the United States boots that are not even totally as made in the United States as this, which is crazy to me because they're one of the newest brands in the boot world, and they somehow figured out how to make a true 100% made in the United States boot when so many other brands, like, it's impossible, you can't do it. These are technically made in the United States, or we import certain parts, or we import raw materials. Origin, one of the newest guys on the block, figured out how to do it. And they figured out a way to make it priced competitively. So let me know what you think, what your opinion is of these three boots. If you think it's the right price, if it's overpriced, underpriced, do you care about 100% MITUSA, or is made in the USA with USA and global source components, or assembled in USA good enough for you? Let me know, and thank you guys for all your support. See ya. Oh, God. What? I'm struggling. Okay, leave me alone.
What's that noise? It's just Josh's ornaments.